Okay, my opponent's claim was that the TSA pat-downs and full body scans violated people on their rights. And his secondary claims were, one, TSA procedures violate the Fourth Amendment. Second, TSA procedures violate passengers and their personal boundaries. Third, TSA pat-downs are pushing certain people too far. In response to his first claim that the Fourth Amendment violates people's rights, I found evidence that it actually does not. According to the Ninth Circuit Court of the United States, they ruled in the court hearing U.S. versus Davis that legally the TSA security measures do not violate the Fourth Amendment. This ruling was in 1973, and it states that the search of legal passengers is legal and it suspends the Fourth Amendment while such passengers are undergoing airport security screening. In response to his second claim, the TSA procedures violate passengers and their personal boundaries. One of the evidence that he states was that the ABC News and Washington Post poll showed that 50% of the pat-downs went too far, but that also means that the other 50% said that they didn't really care too much, or they said the pat-downs were okay. So it's not really that valid since the majority is pretty evil. Another evidence that he states is that the pilots union president stated that the TSA procedures were too violating and they weren't accepted as a long-term solution. And although the pilots are an authority figure in the airplane, they aren't really exactly experts in the security measures that are needed to protect passengers. So I believe that the statement cited for the evidence is not really valid. And he also cited another Gallup poll, and it stated that, his poll stated that 50% were bothered by enhanced pat-downs. And I found another poll that said 50% of Americans actually think that the TSA is doing a good job. And I found another poll that actually stated that 50% of Americans who have flown on an airplane have at least, Americans who have flown on an airplane at least once in the past year have a good or positive image of the TSA. My response to his third claim was that he stated for his third claim that the TSA pat-downs were pushing certain people too far, and for his evidence, he stated that there were he showed us evidence that of several people, such as a cancer survivor and a young boy that was embarrassed in front of the public because the TSA ordered them to expose themselves in public and such. And I want to challenge that by presenting evidence that this is actually necessary, and according to a reporter of CNN, there was actually an experiment done by TSA that tested airport security, and they sent a TSA agent down to the airport and they wired him with a mock bomb. The bomb was the size of a wallet, and he got past airport security very easily. And if this was real, then there would have been a terror attack. Because of this, security needs to be stepped up, and searches are necessary. And just because these instances of people being violated by these pat-downs happened doesn't mean that these are extreme. There are a lot of other cases where people haven't been violated, and actually, by a writer for Forbes magazine states that the TSA screens 650 million people annually, and of those, 1/10 of a percent have actually filed complaints. In conclusion, my opponent did present good evidence and good polls, but I believe the evidence that I presented is better.
All right, I thought you did a nice job listing the main and secondary claims and going directly at them. On the Fourth Amendment argument, you've got a good case here. You want to contrast that to the advocate's evidence on that point, and I don't remember that the advocate presented any information on that point. If they did, you should tell us why the Ninth Circuit Court ruling is better than the legal interpretation that they're citing. If they didn't have any explanation or any evidence on that point, you've got a good court case. Now, of course, it is a 1973 case, so it predates most of the first of all, it predates the TSA, so it's really just talking about searches of passengers on planes in general. If you had any evidence that was specific to the kinds of pat-downs or searches that are going on now, I think that would be even more applicable and helpful. But again, contrasting it to what the advocate presented, I think would make this argument better for you. On the boundaries issue, I think you just don't get very much, progress on this. Well, 50% agree, 50% disagree. That suggests that there's not that much upheaval about it. It sounds like a lot of people are pretty unhappy about it. I'm not sure that 50% means that half the people are okay with it, half the people aren't okay with it. I don't think that you've effectively diminished this argument. I think you've got a better argument at the end when you talk about the number of people who get screened each year versus the number of complaints that there actually are. I think that applies a little bit more to this argument than these Gallup polls about people's satisfaction and what they think of the TSA. I think that that would make your argument a little bit stronger there. On the excessive pat-downs and the examples on the third point, you basically come back and talk about how it's necessary, and you've got an example of from CNN talking where the TSA did testing with a wallet-sized bomb that they got through. But how does that show that cancer patients or kids are in fact deserving of this extra treatment? That seems to me like it just is a general argument that talking about why there continues to be risk and vulnerabilities and why we need to do everything we can on this, but it's not particular to the issues that the advocate's talking about at that point, and I think you need to develop that a little bit more. One other thing, the comparison that I think you missed an opportunity to pay attention to, and that is the success at preventing bombs or terror attacks as a result of the TSA rules. For instance, pardon me, I think I got another one in there somewhere. There it is. You might talk about how effective it's been at preventing further terror attacks. Since the institution of these kinds of pat-downs and searches, have there been any successful bombs? Have there been any successful takeovers of planes? Have we had any of these kinds of incidents that have caused a problem? I think that's one of the ways that you might want to measure this also. And I just think you miss an opportunity to make that argument and contrast that to the position that the advocate's taking, that, wow, some people are overly sensitive about being patted down. You know what? A lot of people are overly sensitive about being exploded. And, when you're comparing the two things, we think that this is a more important issue, and we've been successful on this. I think that's the way you want to portray that argument.